Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys the Roarin' 20s book tag, and this was, I believe, originally created by Emma from Emma Books. I will link her channel up in the cards above. She is one of my favorite booktubers ever, and she is also the very first booktuber that I ever watched from. So this book tag is essentially inspired by The Diviners, which is a series by Libba Bray, one of my favorite series of all time. It is placed in the 1920s, hence why this is called the Roarin' 20s book tag. And if this time period appeals to you and you love paranormal and fantastical elements and just really amazing characters and a really great story, I highly recommend this series. I think this tag was specifically created in anticipation of the release of The King of Crows, which is the fourth and final book in this series, and I actually just finished this book a couple of days ago, and wow, it was crazy, you know, finally reading the ending of this incredible and iconic series. And so to celebrate my love for these books, I thought that it would be fun to do this book tag. So I will link all of the questions and information about this tag down below. And I do have the questions on my phone here, so without further ado, let's get into it. So essentially each prompt is centered around like a slang term from the 20s, but the first question is just called Roarin' 20s, a 2020 release you can't wait for. The first book that comes to mind is Undercover Bromance. This is by Lyssa K. Adams. This is going to be the sequel to the Bromance Book Club, which is a book that I read for Smuttathon in January. I will link my Smuttathon reading vlog up in the cards above. I loved this book so much. It was my absolute favorite book of the readathon. The premise centers around all of these Major League Baseball players, specifically for the Nashville Legends, and they end up forming this book club where they read romance novels in order to understand women better and to help them with their relationships with their spouses or girlfriends or anything like that. It is such a fun premise, such a great story. I adored the first installment and I cannot wait for the second installment. It's coming out in March. Next prompt is That's the Berries, and this prompt is a new release that you loved. I couldn't resist just listing The King of Crows for this one. Like I said, I just finished it a couple of days ago. It may not be my absolute favorite book of the series, but I still loved it and gave it 5 stars. Third prompt is Now You're on the Trolley, which is kind of like Now You're Right or Now You're on the Right Track, essentially. So that is a series that took a book or two to get good, and this was the easiest question for me to answer, and if you've been following me for a while, you may already know my answer for this one, and that is going to be Three Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. This is a 4-book series, and this is the first book, Three Dark Crowns. This is essentially about these triplets who are born and takes place on this mythical island of Fenburn. And so in this queendom, essentially these 3 triplets have to fight to the death for one of them to be the true queen. And this first book I gave 3 stars. I thought it was just really slow paced, but I really enjoyed the characters in the story, so I did continue with the series. And the second book, called One Dark Throne, I loved so much. I gave it 4.5 stars. I thought it was just so much better than the first book. So I highly recommend this series, but just know that this first book is definitely not the best book of the series. The next prompt is Blue Nose, which is like a killjoy. So they want you to talk about a book that put you in a reading slump. I personally haven't been in a reading slump since I really got back into reading back in August of 2018. So I thought that I would just talk about a book that really disappointed me because it's a part of a series that I do enjoy and I really appreciate. And that is going to be Escaping from Houdini by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the 3rd book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. I adore the characters, especially Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell in this series, but this 3rd installment really disappointed me. The premise sounded great because it takes place on this cruise ship. Think something along the lines of the Titanic, because this takes place around like 1890-ish. I thought that the pacing was pretty slow the entire time. I also was very frustrated with the way that Audrey Rose was treating Thomas Cresswell throughout this specific installment, and it just really disappointed me. I do think that this installment could have been an amazing addition, but I just feel like Kerri Maniscalco kind of missed the mark with this one. After that, we have Hotsy Totsy, Attractive, a book with a beautiful cover. So for that one, I'm going to go with my beautiful, gorgeous 10th anniversary edition of Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Look how gorgeous this cover is. I can't, with the beautiful gold and the red. Unfortunately, this one does not have like any sprayed edges or anything like that, but there are some beautiful end pages as you can see here. I've also got some really pretty illustrations throughout like that. I just adore this edition, and I also love this series so much. Next is Let's Blouse, or Let's Get Out of Here, and that is a book that you DNF'd. The most recent book that I can think of that I DNF'd was The King of Bourbon Street by Thea DeSalle. This was a book that was highly recommended by Chelsea from Chelsea Darling Reads. I will link her channel up in the cards above. She is one of my absolute favorite booktubers. I talk about her all the time. This is her favorite smutty novel of all time, so I thought I was going to love this. I ranted about this one quite a bit in my January mid-month wrap-up, so I will also link that video up in the cards above because I don't want to go into all of the things that I hated about this book in this video. But yeah, this really didn't work for me. I ended up DNFing this at about the 44% mark. And the last prompt is Zoozled, a book that caused an epic book hangover, and for that one I'm going to go with The Toll by Neil Shusterman. I read this in the later half of January, so I will also link my January end of the month wrap-up up in the cards because I did have a lot of feelings about this book. But this is the third and final book in the Scythe trilogy. For those of you guys that don't know, this is a series all about this utopia slash dystopia where death has essentially been conquered. And they have these people called Scythes who are the only ones authorized to glean people, which is essentially to murder people in order to control the population. This final installment, it's a chunky book. It's over 600 pages. There's a lot going on here. It went in a completely different direction than I think any of us could have predicted, and I loved it so much. And I can definitely recall immediately after finishing this that I did just kind of have to sit back for a few minutes to fully comprehend what just happened. Yeah, this book was insane. It definitely put me in a book hangover, and I just highly recommend this trilogy. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this Roarin' 20s book tag. I'm not going to tag anyone specifically, but if you want to do this tag, go ahead and do it because I think it's a lot of fun, and I really love the different slang terms from back in the 20s and how they're incorporated in the Diviner series. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys would consider pushing that like button and subscribing, and I thank you in advance if you do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!